I had imagined it as something small, a quiet interruption to her day. Flowers, nothing extravagant, lunch somewhere she liked. Lately, we'd been orbiting each other instead of meeting, two professionals sharing a calendar more than a marriage. I told myself the surprise wasn't about suspicion. It was about repair. The security guard at the entrance didn't know that. No entry for unauthorized persons, he said, polite but firm. I'm the CEO's husband. I replied, already half smiling at the awkwardness that would follow. I expected embarrassment, maybe an apology. Instead, he smiled back, easily, confident. So he said, lowering his voice as if explaining something obvious, I see the husband every day, there he is, coming out right now. He gestured toward the glass doors. I didn't look immediately. I remember that detail clearly. I adjusted my grip on the flowers first, as if bracing for wind. Then I looked. A man in his late 30s walked out beside my wife. They weren't touching. That almost would have been simpler. They walked with ease of repetition. She handed him a folder without breaking stride. He leaned slightly toward her when she spoke. She laughed, not loudly, comfortably. Routine has a posture. I saw it in theirs. I didn't step forward, didn't call her name. The guard glanced between us. Confused now, I forced a small nod. Must be a misunderstanding. I said, thank you. I stepped aside and watched them continue across the parking lot. She didn't see me, or if she did, she didn't register me as significant. The flowers stayed in my hand long after they disappeared. Yeah, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, not spiraling. Not yet. My mind did something colder. It began reorganizing memory. Late evenings framed as strategy meetings. A change in how she introduced me at events. My husband becoming simply my name. The benefits documentation she had insisted on handling herself this year. Small administrative details I hadn't questioned. Trust doesn't collapse with a crash. It erodes paperwork first. By the time I drove away, I wasn't angry. I was narrowing. I returned at 30:40 p.m., not through the front entrance. There are advantages to being a majority stakeholder whose name rarely appears in press releases. I prefer invisibility. It keeps rooms honest. Today, it kept me calm. I asked legal to assemble compliance. HR joined without knowing why. A brief message went to executive leadership requesting immediate attendance regarding documentation discrepancies. She walked into the conference room composed. When she saw me at the head of the table, something shifted behind her eyes. Not fear, calculation. I didn't mention the morning. I referred instead to irregularities in spousal benefits filings, to conflict of interest disclosures left incomplete, to an executive-level employee, her operations director, who had been listed as emergency contact in multiple internal documents under the designation domestic partner. Silence carries more authority than accusation. The man from the parking lot sat 2 chairs away from her. He avoided looking at me. Legal outlined policy violations in neutral language. HR confirmed inconsistencies in the system logs. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. Access badges will be suspended pending review. Compliance said. Security entered. Not forcefully, not humiliatingly, just present. The guard from the morning stood at the door. Recognition flickered across his face when he saw me seated at the head of the table. It wasn't theatrical, just clarity. The other man handed over his badge. No resistance. His departure felt administrative, not emotional. Control doesn't roar when it shifts. It becomes quiet and undeniable. I turned to my wife. Effective immediately. I said evenly, you're placed on temporary leave pending investigation, full pay, full cooperation expected. Her jaw tightened. You're doing this publicly? I'm doing this formally, I replied. That was the only personal sentence I allowed myself. At home that night, there was no screaming. She stood in the kitchen longer than necessary. I sat at the dining table with documents I didn't read. I didn't think you'd come to the office, she said finally. That sentence told me more than any confession could. You replaced me in routine. I answered, not loudly, not bitterly, just fact. She didn't deny it. Infidelity is one thing. The daily editing of reality is another. The guard's casual certainty hurt more than any hidden message would have. I was going to tell you, she said. About him? I asked. No, about leaving. That surprised me. The marriage hadn't exploded, it had thinned. Quietly, she had already stepped halfway out long before I showed up with flowers. The investigation concluded 2 weeks later. Policy violations confirmed. The operations director resigned before termination was finalized. My wife retained her position after formal reprimand and public disclosure to the board. It was cleaner that way, contained in business, order can be restored. At home, structure replaced intimacy. We scheduled conversations like meetings. Lawyers were consulted not in hostility, but in realism. We still share a house, but trust, once administrative, doesn't rebuild emotionally. It remains archived. Sometimes I think about the guard's smile, how certain he was, how normal it all seemed to him. That was the moment something ended, not with shouting, but with recognition. Power allowed me to correct the company. It did nothing to save the marriage. And that may be the most honest consequence of all.